hear that? Holy crap. I'm pretty sure that's a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. Welcome to Season 2. Welcome back to Season 2 of Bigfoot Campfire Stories. This episode was recently brought to me by a bear hunter in the High Sierra Mountains of California. Josh and Larry were hunting near Sierra City, California, and had a hairy run-in of the Bigfoot kind. Let's hear his story. Well, it was Friday morning when my good friend and hunting buddy Josh called me and invited me up on a bear hunt for the weekend. He had just scored the weekend off due to a failure at work and was heading up in a few hours. And since I work for myself at home, I just wrapped up what I was doing and headed to pick him up just a few hours later. We took the back way up to the hunting grounds as it was only a 90-minute drive, and we went down through Sierra City. It was the last place for gas and cell phone coverage for the weekend. All of the area we were in was prime bear country, and we were excited to be here for the hunt. Josh had guided me to the campsite, a safe place not far from our hunting location, so we set up camp and set a fire for the night. We couldn't wait for the hunt in the morning. The next early morning, I awoke to find Josh stoking the fire as it had dropped down to damn near freezing overnight. We decided to make a plan that will help us both out on today's hunt. I'd sit in a tree stand while Josh stalked a spiral around the stand to drive any bears my way. If he had a clean shot, of course he was to take it. Otherwise, it'd be up to me to take the shot from up high if it wanders near my spot. So we ate a quick bite and headed out to our stand location. I parked the truck out of the way of the forest road, and we hiked on into the stand location. Along the way, we saw plenty of bear sign. In fact, in the same location, we found a large scat pile of fresh right next to a day-old scat pile of fresh from the same bear. So we knew we should have a great chance of taking this bear on this hunt. We both climbed up into the tree stand and had a long look around. It wasn't long before Josh had spotted a bear trail throughout the alder bushes. He pointed it out as we checked it with the binoculars, so I could be sure that that would be where I would likely see a bear coming from that location. There were other signs around, tree markings and big broken bushes, so there must be a big bear in the area. Well, Josh climbed down and left his pack at the base of the tree. I got comfy as usual, as sitting in the wilds of the Sierra Nevada mountains while having the Sierra buttes in sight never gets boring. Even if I sit here all weekend long, never seeing anything but Josh, that'll be just fine with me. Well, off Josh went on his hike. He had hiked up some quarter of a mile before I saw him leave my sight. We didn't have two-way radios, so the plan was for me to just stay put up to 4 hours, and 6 hours come find him. Now the wait begins. I was happy that the wildlife was abundant at this time of year. September, the high slopes is teeming with food from berries and rodents to deer and, well, everything else in between. A fawn wandered into sight for a bit as I watched through my binocs for about 20 minutes and then realized there were 12 more deer just behind him. But this was bear season, and that would do me no good. About an hour had passed and the deer had moved off when I saw a bobcat wander through not 40 yards from my stand. Looked like a big sucker, too. About the third hour, I finally heard what I thought was a bear grunt, and then a huff right behind that. I started scanning the area looking for the source, but the brush was so thick I just couldn't see through it. I could hear it crunching through the brush just on the other side of the big bush line, 20 yards from the stand. I sat and waited for what seemed like forever until I finally saw the bushes moving again, but no sight of the bear. There must have been a berry bush on the other side of these bushes, and the tree stand had just been there long enough for the bushes to have grown too tall to be able to see over them anymore. After about 20 more minutes, the sound and the movements had stopped, and not 30 minutes later, Josh emerged from the forest back onto the trail. Well, I gathered up my pack and climbed down to meet him. Since I hadn't heard a shot, and he wasn't signaling for me to come to him, I knew that he too had been unsuccessful today, but there's still tomorrow. Josh finally got to the tree stand, picked up his pack, and grabbed a bottle of water and began to tell me of his hike for the day. He had seen plenty of more scat piles on several different bears, but there was some other scat that he brought back with him that just didn't make any sense at all. It was like human turds, only twice the size. He wasn't quite sure what to make of it, Well, we broke it open to see what it had been eating and found a bunch of insect and vegetable debris, berries for the most part, but just like the bear scat, only way, way too big. This would have been a 900-pound black bear. So we walked over to the brush bushes to check my theory, and sure enough, just on the other side of that was a huge berry patch. We walked the edge of the entire patch and actually located a much better stand to hunt from, so we sat at the base of it for a few hours to see what animals came and went. Sure enough, there were bear tracks in and out of the patch, roughly coming and going the same way, so tomorrow we should have better chances. So we packed it in a little bit early and headed back to camp. The next morning, our excitement renewed, we headed back to our new location after packing up camp as early as we dared. We broke camp and parked just before dawn and got to the tree stand just as the sun peeked up into the sky. Josh and I sat in the tree stand together all morning long. At about lunchtime, we got out of the stand and had a bite to eat and went for a walk together around the berry patch. It was about the size of 3 football fields, longer than it was wide, and you could see from one end to the other. We found some very fresh tracks for what seemed like earlier today or at some point in the night, and another bear trail that led off to the north. So Josh decided he was going to follow the trail while I finished the circle and headed back to the tree stand. As I was walking back to the stand, I noticed something dark moving back into the bushes some 20 yards from the tree stand. I stopped in my tracks and went down on one knee. I sat and scoped the area for about 5 minutes, but I didn't see anything else move. So I stood up and moved back to the tree stand. I climbed a ladder and settled in and started glassing the berries again. Then something dark was still moving in the area. I had seen walk back, so I repositioned myself for a shot if it presented itself. I kept hearing the sounds of a big animal eating, something grunting and groaning, smacking of its chops. It had to be a big bear. I saw the dark mass move again, only this time it moved off silent and fast. Then all the sound stopped. Disappointed, I sat back in the stand looking over the berry patch again, and something caught my eye across the patch. So I grabbed my field glasses and took a close look, and there, staring back at me, was a large, hair-covered creature, but definitely not a bear. I froze as I realized what was watching me while eating berries from the bushes it stood behind. I watched as it would reach down and grab a bunch of berries, rip off the branch, and bring it up to its lips, and pull the fruit from it, slims, 10s at a time. It had only one very long arm hanging from the tree it stood next to, while the other it ate with. The head was much like a gorilla, rounded on the top and sloping back with short, dark, black hair around the face. The bushes obstructed my view of the bottom of the creature, but it gave the feeling of being at least 7 feet tall. I sat there watching this creature shove branch after branch of berry bush into its face, with what seemed like no concern for me whatsoever. I never had the thought of shooting this thing. It seemed too unique, I guess, to kill. I noticed Josh had emerged from the forest once more, so I became very quickly concerned for the creature itself. But when I glanced back to the creature, it was gone. Well, I quickly exited the tree stand and ran out to meet Josh on foot. He saw my hurried gait towards him, so he quickened pace to meet up. When I told him exactly what I had seen, he wasn't as amazed as I thought he would be, and he said, and I quote, "Larry, those things are seen on this mountain all the time, but no one believes us, so we just don't talk about it." He had figured that the scat we had found must have belonged to one of them, and now that we think back on it, of course, it makes total sense. Well, we slowly crossed the field once more and checked the location where the creature had been. There was lots of evidence that something had been there, but no giant primate tracks or anything that looked like could be cast. Nothing that looked like hair either. It was just one of those deals, either you believe me or not. Josh believed me, and our time was up on the mountain that day, so we hiked out to the truck and started to head home. When I dropped Josh off at his place, he said, "Tell anyone you like the story, but don't get mad if they don't believe you." And now I tell all of you. They are real. They are out there. These two hunters learned the legends are real. Would you be able to not take the shot when that close to a monster? I'm not too sure I could. Thanks for watching. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.